In this video we're going to look at percent problems. We'll do 5 pages. Here's page 1. What number is a percentage of something? And then at the end of page 2 we start with what percent of 6 is 3 and what percent of something is something. And then by page 4 we're looking at 30 is 50% of what number, 22 is 25% of what number, and so on. And then we'll look at this and then end up with what is 5.4% of that. Okay, so let's start with page 1. What number is 50% of 6? Write down the answer first of all. Okay, now we have to get what number is 44% of 38, so of course we'll need a little bit of a strategy. But can you tell me the answer to this? 50% is the same thing as 1/2, right? Isn't it? Remember that? So what number is half of 6? The answer is 3, right? Now the way we were going to do this is we're going to say, okay, we want to get 50% of 6. Now, of, you might remember, means multiply. Okay? 50% can be turned into a decimal. What's 50% as a decimal? You can move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left and get 0.50 or 0.50. So 0.50 of 50% of 6 is 0.50 times 6. So you can just multiply these numbers. Okay? 0.5 times 6. 6 5s is 30, carry the 3, 6 zeros is 3, and 1 decimal point in the problem, so 3.0. So 0.5 times 6 gives 3.0 or 3, right? So that's the strategy, is turn the percentage into a decimal and multiply. So what number is 44% of 38? You know, the first thing you gotta do is breathe for a second and think, what am I doing? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get 44% of 38. I know that of means multiply, okay? Because I want to get 44% can be turned into a decimal. Turn 44% into a decimal. So of is multiply. 44% as a decimal. I can move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right, giving me 0.44 or 0.44, multiplied by 38, right? So if I go 0.44 times 38, I'll get the answer. So you've got to multiply these numbers. 8 times 4, 32, carry the 3. 8 times 4, 32, and 3 is 35, carry the 3. 8 times 0 is 0, and 3 is 3. Put down 0, multiply by 3. 3 fourths is 12, carry the 1. 3 fourths is 12, and 1 is 13. Add these. 2, 7, 6, 1. And there are 2 decimal places in the problem, so there's going to be 2 decimal places in the answer. So 16.72 is the answer. 16.72. Okay. So on to page 2. What number is 7.5% of 2,230? So once again, and we could think about this as, say, Social Security tax on a monthly wage of $2,230, right? So what would the Social Security tax for the month be for this? So first of all, turn this percentage into a decimal. And what do you get? Well, the decimal point can be moved 2 spaces to the left, like that, to get 0.0, right? So that's going to give me 0.075 or 0.075. Of is multiply, so multiplied by this number, right? 2230. So it's this times this, and then you just calculate that. So 2230, 0.075, multiply them. So 5 zeros is 0, 5 threes is 5, carry the 1, 5 twos is 10, and 1 is 11, carry the 1, 5 twos is 10, 1 is 11. Put down 0, placeholder, and multiply by 7. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 3, 21, carry the 2. 7 times 2 is 14, 14 and 2 is 16, carry the 1. 7 times 2 is 14, 14 and 1 is 15, and now add, and I've got 0, 5, 2, 7, 6, 1, and I have 1, 2, 3 decimal places in the problem. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3 decimal places in the answer. So that is 167.25. So Social Security tax of 7.5% on this monthly wage is $167.25. Okay. Okay, so that's the answer there. Now this is a different type of question. What percent of 6 is 3? Can you do that one? What percent of 6 is 3? Just write down the answer. What percent of 6 is 3? And well, the answer is 3 is 50%, is half of 6. Okay, because 3 is 50% of 6. It's half, right? And I guess one way of figuring this out, and you can decide whether you want to do it this way or not, but what percent is what we don't know. We'll call that P, right? P is the percentage we do not know. Of means multiply, times. What percent times 6 is? Is can be represented with an equal sign. Is 3. So what percentage of 6 is 3? Isn't that weird that you can turn that English sentence into an equation? And now we can find P. And P, you see, because it's P multiplied by 6 equals 3, or you could write that as 6 times P equals 3. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is, you've got to divide by 6 on both sides. We did this before, didn't we? And we get P equals 3 over 6. You see, that's the percentage. And now you just turn this fraction into a percent and you have the answer, because the answer is 3 over 6, and in lowest terms, what's that? 1 over 2, right? And then turn that into a percentage. Well, you've got to divide 2 into 1. 2 into 1 goes 0 times, but 2 into 10 goes 5 times. So we get 0.5 or 0.50, or so 0.50, or if you move that decimal point 2 spaces to the right, that is 50%. So 3 over 6 becomes a half, which ends up being 50%. Okay, so yeah, it's a kind of an interesting one. Some students like to just begin here. They just go, okay, 3 out of 6. Look, what percent of 6 is 3? That tells me that I need to go 3 over 6 and just turn that into a percentage. Okay, so some students don't bother with the equation. That's fine. I think it's kind of fun to try the equation because it'll give us some practice for later problems as well. But, you know, if you can get the answer, you can get the answer. So, what percent of 20 is 9? I'm going to set up the equations for all of these just for the fun of it because I think it's good practice for you. But what percent is something we don't know? Okay, what percent? I'm going to turn this whole sentence into an equation. What percent? I do not know, and I'm going to call it P. It's the unknown. Okay, of means multiply. What percent P of 20, so 20 comes next, is, the word is can be represented with an equal sign, is 9. See that? What percent of 20 is 9? And now I need to solve that equation for P, and we did this earlier. If you want to solve for P, P is being multiplied by 20, so you must divide by 20 on both sides. So we find that the percentage P is 9 over 20. And that is the answer. But the answer at the moment is in fraction form. What we want is we want the answer in percent form. Okay? So we've got to turn this fraction into a percentage. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Well, let's see. It's 9 over 20, so you got to go 20 into 9, and let's stick a bunch of zeros there, right? See what you come up with. $20 into 90, 4 times 4 20s is 80. Subtract, I get 10. Bring down a 0. 20 into 100. 5 times 20, 100. Subtract, and remainder 0. Okay, remainder 0. And this decimal point needs to be above here. So I get 0.45. So I've turned it into a decimal, 0.45. And now, of course, the answer has to be in percent form. So you've got to turn that decimal into a percent. So move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right, and we get 45%. And by goodness, I have to say, if you guys are able to do this, you know, like, this is awesome. I mean, you're going from a sentence to an equation, solving an equation, going from a fraction to a decimal, going from a decimal to a percentage. I mean, you're already better at math than most people. So you gotta pat yourselves on the back and realize how good you're getting at this point. Because I'm kind of expecting you to do all this and then thinking, wow, it's really cool if you can do all this at this point. It's really good. Okay. Anyway, so what percent of 16 is 7? By all means, press pause and do this one by yourself. Okay? Press pause and do this by yourself. Okay, I'll try it now. What percent is what we don't know? I'll call it P. Of means multiply. Multiplied by. P multiplied by 16 is equals 7, right? So 16, it goes here, the 7 goes here. So what percent is P of times 16 is 7. Okay. And when you solve that equation for P, you divide by 16. You see? And now you just get P on its own. The percentage is 7 over 16. Now once again, some students, when they see this equation, they go, what percent of 16 is 7? Oh, I've got to get 7 out of 16. So they think about that. They go, okay, well, 16 is kind of like the total, and 7 is the part. So I want to get 7 out of 16, and they just make this fraction, and then they go from there. And that's fine. You can do that if you like. I kind of like to set up the equation, just at least in the video, just for the practice. Okay. So now we have to turn this into a decimal, and then after it's in a decimal form we can put it in percent form. Okay. So 16 into 70. 16 into 7 goes 0 times. 16 into 70. Let's see. Well, 20 goes 20, 40, 60. So 4 20s is 80. I'm going to try 4. If it doesn't work, I'll try something else. 4 times 6 is 24. Carry the 2. 4 times 1 is 4, and 2 is 6. Subtract. 70 minus 64 is 6. Bring a 0 down. 16 into 60 goes, I'll try 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, and 1 is 4. Subtract. 60 minus 48 is 12. Down to 0. Now, what's this? 16 into 120? 5 16s is 80. Oh my goodness, this isn't going to be right either, is it? Let's see. I'm going to try 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42, carry the 4. 7 times 7. 7 times 1 is 7, and 4. 7 and 4 is 11. Okay, need another 0, huh? Because 120 minus 112 is 8. Put this 0 down, and now this time it should work. 16 into 80 goes 5 times. 5 16s is 80. Subtract, we get 0. At last remainder 0, so the answer is totally 0.4375. And now, so we've got the percentage or the answer as a fraction and a decimal, but now we have to turn the decimal into a percent. So how do you turn that decimal into a percent? Well, move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right to get 43.75%. Okay. Okay, page 4. A different type of question here. 30 is 50% of what number? See if you can actually turn this into an equation. Let me start you off. 30 can be written as 30, okay? Becomes an equal sign. How do you think we're going to deal with 50%? We usually turn percentages into whats when we're trying to calculate things. If you want to calculate something, 50% is not going to help. I mean, 50% needs to be written as a decimal, right? So turn 50% into a decimal. The decimal point is here at the moment. To turn a percentage into a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left to get 0.50 or 0.50. Okay. Now, what do you do with of? Of is what? Of is multiply by. What number? What am I going to do with this? What number? Just stick a letter in there. It could be any letter, right? I guess when people are looking for a number, they often like to use the letter N. But you could also use X or A or B or C or whatever. But I guess I'll just use N. I guess people like that a lot. So anyway, for the number. So 30 is 50% of what number? We've turned this sentence into an equation. Now we can solve it. So this is the reason I like to do it this way is many reasons. One is it's great practice to turn a sentence into an equation. That is really good practice. You'll need that in the next few classes. we have already learned how to solve equations. Why don't we use our knowledge to use our skills to do things with? Okay, that's another reason. And it's kind of a straightforward way of doing it. But in any case, do you know the answer to this, by the way? Well, anyway, so the answer shouldn't surprise us when we get it, I hope. But so I want to get the n by itself. N is being multiplied by 0.50. What do I need to divide this by to get n on its own? I've got an equation, n is being multiplied by this number. I just divide by that number, don't I? And I must divide both sides by that number. 30 divided by 0.50. Okay? So, I guess I need to calculate that. 30 divided by 0.50. And once again, you could think about this as, look, if I multiply it by 10 over 10, I get 10 times 0.5 is 5 on the bottom, 300 on the top. Okay? Because if I'm going 0.5 into 30, I need to move the decimal point one space to the right, and also this decimal point one space to the right, and stick in a placeholder at 0, because this is going to become 5 into 300. Okay? Now 5 into 30 goes 6 times, and 5 into 0 goes 0 times. So the answer becomes 60 anyway. So 60 equals n. Does that surprise you? N is 60. 30 is 50% of what number? 30 is 60%, 50% of 60. 30 is 50% is a half, isn't it? 30 is 1/2 of 60. That makes sense, right? The number is 60. Yep. Okay, 22 is 25% of what number? Let's first turn it into an equation so we get some practice. So 22 can be written like that. Is can be written as what? Is equals, right? Write 25% as a decimal. 25% as a decimal. Take the decimal point and move it where? 1, 2 spaces to the right. 0.25 or 0.25 of becomes what? Multiply, right? And what number becomes what? So it's 0.25 multiplied by what number just becomes some letter like n. You can plug in a letter. Okay. Now we can solve this equation. How do I solve it? N is being multiplied by 0.25, so I need to divide. In order to get n by itself, okay, I need to divide this by 0.25, right? And then these numbers cross cancel, you see. So you get n on its own. But you must divide this side by 0.25 as well, right? So then you have to calculate 22 divided by 0.25. So that is 0.25 into 22. And I can't divide a decimal into something. So I must move this decimal point 2 spaces to the right, and also move this decimal point 2 spaces to the right. Okay? So that gives me 25 into 2200. So what does that become? $25 into 22 won't go. 25 into 220. I'm going to guess 8 times. Let's see what happens. 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16. And 4 is 20. Subtract. And I get 20. Bring a 0 down. 25 into 200. I think that might be 8 times. What do you think? 8 times 5, 40, carry the 4. 8 times 2, 16, and 4 is 20. Subtract, and I get 0. So the remainder is 0. The answer then is just 88. So 22 over 0.25 is in fact 88. So the number is 88. And so what I've said is now 25% of something, you might remember that's actually 1/4. You remember that? 22 is 1/4 of 88. Does that make sense? 22 is 1/4 of 88? It is, right? If you take 88 and divide it by 4, you get 22, right? What about this one? 1710 is 18% of what number? In other words, if you're at a restaurant, and I have a bunch of kids, so this happens sometimes, and let's say the tip is 18% and the tip turns out to be $17.10. What was the original bill then? If the tip is 18%, like what would the original bill have been? Because $17.10 is the 18%. So 1710 is 18% of what bill at the restaurant? What number? Okay. So let's go ahead and solve this one, right? So 1710, 17.10, that goes there, is, how can you write is in an equation? Equals? How about 18%? What's that? As a decimal. What's 18% as a decimal? 18, the decimal point is here, so I need to move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left, and I get 0.18 or 0.18. Of, what's of? Of means multiply, right? It's kind of like, just if you remember, 2 of those apples. 2 of those apples is like saying I want 2 of those apples, or I want 2 times an apple. 2 times an apple. Of means multiply, right? 18% of what number? How can you write what number? N, or X, or A, or B, or whatever you want. Some letter, right? So I have 0.18 times N. If N is being multiplied by 0.18, how can I get N by itself? I need to divide by, to get N by itself, I need to divide that by 0.18, right? And now these guys cross cancel, but I must divide this side by 0.18 also. So my goodness, 17.10 divided by 0.18 is what I need to do. So let's do that. 0.18 into 17.10. I cannot divide a decimal into anything, so I need to turn it into a whole number. So I'll go move the decimal point 2 spaces to get to make sure that that's 18, because I want to use 18, a whole number, right? But I must do the same to this guy, move him 2 spaces. So this was the trick we learned when we were dividing decimals, and we're getting to review that now, right, basically, which is good. So go ahead and do this. What do you get? 18 into 17 won't go. 18 into 171. I'm going to try 9 times, I think. 9 8 72. Carry the 7. 9 ones is 9 and 7 is 16. Subtract. So that 7 becomes a 6. This becomes 1. 11 minus 2 is 9. 18, bring the 0 down. 18 into 90 goes how many times? Let's try 5 times. 5 eighths is 40, carry the 4. 5 ones is 5, and 4 is 9. Subtract 0. Remainder 0. So the answer is exactly 95. So the answer is that the restaurant bill, you see, well, it's 1710 is 18% of $95. So the whole family at the restaurant and the extended family and whoever else turns up, it's $95 is the total bill at the restaurant. The tip is 18%, and so the tip is, you know, $17.10. So if you were just told, once again, if you were just told the tip was $17.10, you knew it was 18%, then that means the bill must have been $95. So we've just figured that out, right? Okay, by all means, press pause and try this one by yourself. See what you get, and then check the video. What is 5.4% of 420? Okay, this is the kind of first type we tried. Just throw it in here at the end of the video, just to see how you're going to do with it. All we have to do is get 5.4% of this. Okay, so we just have to turn this into a decimal. Turn that into a decimal. Move the decimal point 1, 2 spaces to the left, and stick in a placeholder 0. So 0.054. Oops, 4. Or 0.054 of multiplied by 420, right? So I need to multiply this times this. So let's do that. 0.054, and I guess I'll do the 420 up here. Multiply that. 4 zeros, 0. 4 twos, 8. 4 fours, 16. Put down a placeholder 0 times by 5. 5 zeros is 0. 5 twos is 10. Carry the 1. 5 fours is 20, and 1 is 21. And then multiply by these zeros. Let's not bother with that. 0 and 0 is 0. 8 and 0 is 8. 6 and 0 is 6. That makes 2. That makes 2. How many decimal points in the question? 1, 2, 3. So how many in the answer? 1, 2, 3. Need to put it here. So 22.68 would be the answer there. What is 5.4% of 420? The answer is 22.68. If this was a real life example of this, would be kind of saying, well, let's say your Medicare tax on your wages is 5.4%. Okay, so your weekly wage, let's say, is $420. 5.4% of that becomes $22.68. So that's your Medicare tax per week on your wages of $420, right?